Hello everyone, we'll welcome you in Academy of Fine Learning and in this small video tutorial on Java Constructor. We'll see the basics of the Java Constructor as well as we'll learn regarding the Java Constructor overloading. So first let we learn few topics, few simple concepts regarding the Java Constructor. What is a Java Constructor actually? Remember one thing, that each and every class in a Java has a default constructor. So whether you are defining a constructor or not, a Java Constructor will be made available to you by the Java compiler always. And whenever you will create an object of the class, the Java constructor will be, the default Java constructor will be automatically called. I'll show you all these things using the Eclipse very soon. So first, to recall this point and remind this point, that each class in Java has a default constructor. The second thing is that the constructor are definitely called when objects are created. You don't call the constructor, but the constructor is automatically called. That's the second thing regarding the Java constructor. Third thing is that the programmers can create own constructor to do certain tasks while object creation, such as initialization of an instance variable. So that this thing is clear to you, that you can create your own constructor also, and that constructors can have one or more parameters as you like. Even zero parameterized constructors are also possible to be created. Now we'll see regarding the characteristics of a constructor. Each and every Java constructor's name should be same as the name of the class in which it is declared. The name of the constructor is same as the name of the class. That's the first point. Second point is that it doesn't have a return type, but it looks like a method. It looks like a method, like suppose the name of the class is X, then X, open the bracket and close the bracket. That should be there, but it should not have any return type. Let me come over here and show it to you. We have a class, my class. So in this my class, if you want to create a constructor, even if you don't create a constructor, then also I told that JVM will provide you the constructor. So if I create a class object of the class, new object is the name I have given. Okay, new keyword you are using to create the object of the class, and you are providing this statement. So whenever this statement we are giving now to create the class, it is actually calling the default constructor. So Java compiler, Java virtual machine already created a default constructor which looks like this. Looks exactly like this. Let me just write it down. This looks like this. The name is, as I told over here, that name must be same as the name of the class, and it looks like a method, and it should not have any return type. It doesn't have any return type. Here you can not write void, it will throw an error, or it will be taken as a method. So as here we are making it, it's being taken as a method. So my class is taken as a method. It is not taken as a constructor. If you want to make it a constructor, there should be no return type. Now it will be taken by the compiler as a constructor. You can write anything you wish, but generally we use this portion for initializing the instance variables. Now when this object is created, what will happen? You will call this default constructor, and the content which you are doing inside the, we are writing inside the my class constructor, that will be printed. So hello will be printed. See, hello is printed, because whenever this line is executed and whenever this particular thing is executed, default constructor will be called. If you don't write anything, then the default constructor will be like this. Just the body will be there, nothing inside. We are going to write my own definition of the default constructor, and we are printing here hello. So hello will be printed in the output screen. But if you write it as void, suppose, then it is not considered as a constructor anymore, because it has a return type. Constructor will be having the name of the class and the opening bracket and closing bracket for the first bracket. Looks like a method, but it doesn't have a return type, which makes it separated from the method declarations. Now if you execute it, you can see that nothing is printed into the output screen. Nothing has come over here, because this is taken as a method. So you can call this method like calling any other method. You can call like this. That's possible. See, now it's clear, and write it down in the output screen hello, because it is taken as a method. If you don't give any return type, then it has become a constructor now. And then this line will call this particular segment of the code, and this will throw an error because it can't find a method. A method should have a return type. So that is the only difference between a declaring a constructor and declaring a method in Java. We'll see the next point. If we don't define any constructor inside a class, Java compiler automatically create the default constructor at compile time and assign default values for all the variables declared in the class. Suppose in this class one variable is there, int a. So by default integer variables gets the value 0, right? Default value is 0. If you don't write this constructor, then what will happen? We'll delete this. We have written in a default constructor, but as I told, that default constructor will be provided by Java, so this line will execute for sure. This object will be also created for sure, but it will not give any value for the integer a, because integer a is not initialized by any constructor. So if we print like this, then what happens? We can assign any value. Even you can print this value. We just show you. Right, I'm executing the out is 10. Yes, as simple as that. Very simple. This code to understand is very simple. If you have the basic knowledge of the classes, you can understand. Now you've seen that you have commented this part, then it is giving the value of a is equals to 0. Why? Because a as an integer by default gets the value initialized with the value 0. For a float, 0.0. Correct? For string, it is null. If you want to initialize the value of a while the object is created in this line, then you have to modify the default constructor. So you can just write down the default constructor which will be provided by Java. Will modify that in our own definition. What we'll do, we'll write down a is equals to any value we can give. That value will be assigned now. Now if you execute this, then what will happen? This 10 value will be printed. The value of a is equals to 10. So the default values are provided over here if you don't do any short of the initialization using the constructor. Sometimes we use the constructor to give some default value to the variables, instance variable of the class. A Java constructor may or may not contain parameters. So as you can see that the default constructors don't have any parameters, but you can define your own constructor which will be having some sort of the parameters. A constructor is automatically called and executed by JVM at the time of object creation. Definitely when the object is created over here, that time it is being called automatically. You are not calling like this, right? Like if it is a method, then you have to call in this way by using the object of the class dot name of the method. But as it is not a method, it is just a constructor, then it will be automatically called while creation of the object when you use the new keyword. These are the basic features of and the characteristics of the constructor in Java. Now we'll see that we have seen already that constructor declaration, how to declare the constructor. It has a return type, then it has a class name and opening bracket and closing bracket. If it has parameters and arguments, we can give inside the bracket. That's it. The return type here in this particular case, generally we make constructors return type as public, because the object is generally created from the outside of the class. Yes, so it's always preferable to provide as what? Private, public as a return type of the constructor. But here we can see that I have given the return type as private for this constructor, but it's still working. Why? Because the object of my class new OB is created within the body of the class my class. So in this particular case, it is possible to provide the return type as private. Similarly, you can give protected and we can leave it like last case to make it default. But if you want to create the object of the class from outside of the class or from the outside of the package, that happens generally for large and real world Java programs, Java projects, that time you have to provide it only by public so that it can be called while the object is created from outside of the package also. Now see that constructor overloading concept. So what is the constructor overloading concept? As method overloading has the concept of having the same name of the method with the different signatures, the same thing implies over here. That is, a class can have more than one constructor. Now, I'll remove this public statement here. I'll give a simple example of constructor overloading. You can just have the similar kind of method. Okay, the two constructors cannot have the same definition. See this? These two constructors are now having in the line number 4 and 8 same definitions. It will throw an error. So you have to definitely give some different values here. We'll give XYZ. Now the XYZ will get the value. XYZ variables value will be assigned to the variable A. Yes. So this is the default constructor, and this is parameterized constructor. So these two constructor is of the constructor of the class my class, so have the same name my class, but these two constructors now have two different way of defining because their parameter list is different. So it is known as the constructor overloading. Very simple terms. Here you can see that provide now new, if you create another object and if you assign some values over here, suppose 100 you are giving, then this new object will assign with the value A is equals to 100 because when this line will be executed, it will call my class with passing with an integer value 100. That constructor will be called for this because for this particular calling, this particular way of initialization of the object of new OB1, we are seeing that this constructor is matching with this statement. So the value of XYZ will be assigned to the variable A. So if you now access A, then we can see the value of A has shown as what? Right? So new OBJ1, new OB1, then the value will be 100. Previously it was 10. Execute and see. Next line clearly visible to you. The value of A was 10. This example from this line number 16, because we use that new OB to create OB object using the default constructor. Here we are assigning the value of A is equals to 10. But when you're using a single parameterized constructor and an integer value you are passing, then you are assigning the value of A is equals to XYZ. Here the XYZ is 100. So you're getting the value of 100 over here. This is an example of simple way of showing you constructor overloading. Now we'll go for a concrete program of a constructor overloading, a bit more complicated program so that it makes sense to you clearly. In this particular example, as you can see, okay, there's a last name problem here. That's it. So what's happening over here is that it's very simple thing. We have a class employee. In this class employee, we have one constructor, which is a zero parameterized constructor. And we are modifying the default constructor, the zero parameterized default constructor with the value employee details. So whenever we'll create an object with the default constructor, it will print in the output screen employee details. Yes, when we'll call this particular constructor with a single string argument, it will display employee name and the value which will pass. And we'll call this constructor, that is, we'll create an object with two values. One is the string value and then the ID value, integer value. Then it will print company name with the string value and employee ID with the integer value. If we create the object from here, then what will happen? Hope that this problem will be sorted out. Well, so you can understand this. When we are calling this line, then what will happen? It will go to this line will go to which line? To the default constructor. Correct? Employee is going to this particular constructor because it is a default zero parameterized constructor, and here also you're using zero parameterized constructor. When we'll call the new the object, when we'll create the new object emp2 with the single parameter inside written as deep DEEP, which is string. So the string literally is put within the double inverted comma. Yes, so this line will go to this particular constructor. It will be called as employee name and the name will be printed. And for the third example, what will be displayed? It will display the value of system.out.println company name equals to this company, which will pass HCL over here, and then we are passing with the employee ID. So 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, that will be printed on the output screen. So that's the case for this particular example. Make sure that when you are executing this program, make sure to use this as my class. So otherwise we can do one thing, we can make everything as my class. We just create a single class, my class over here. So you can all the thing as my class. All as done. For the my class objects we have created three ways of creating my class objects. One is by using default constructor, single parameterized constructor, two parameterized constructor. So for depends upon the which constructor you are using for creating this object, the particular constructors will be called with the particular signature, and that content will be printed into the output screen. So these outputs are generated over. Similarly, program with the student data class. The name will be having a problem into the output screen. Last program. This program is a bit complicated than the last example. To change the name as student data. That's it. Otherwise, it will throw an error because class is named as my class. Yes. Hope that will. What's happening over here? We have defined a class student data. The name of the class is student data. There we have the private variables: integer student ID, string student name, and integer student age. Yes. Now we have one constructor, default constructor, zero parameterized constructor. Default constructor is always zero parameterized. Okay. So this zero parameterized constructor is assigning the value of student ID. By default it is 100. Then student name is new student, student age is 18. But when you are calling a three parameterized constructor of student data, then the first integer value which will pass, that will be the student ID. The second string value which will pass, that will be student name. Third integer value which will pass, that will be the student age. You cannot pass any other thing. Either you have to call the default constructor, or you have to create the object with that's the integer, string, and int in this sequence only, because these two parameters, these two constructors are only available. So instead of giving int, string, int, if you give int, int, string, or string, int, int, then it will throw error. I'll show it to you. Then we have the getter and setter method. This get method is returning the this get student ID is returning the student's ID. Whatever things are being assigned by using this constructor, that will be returned from here. So this line will return the student ID by this method. This set student ID will set the value of the integer which will pass as the student ID. The student string get student name. This method will return student name which has been already assigned by the creating object. Set student name will set the student name as it is passed into the method. Get student age will return the student age, and set student age will assign the student age into this particular variables as it is. Yes. So now the main thing which I want to show you is that in these lines, this thing lies in these two lines, line number 43, line number 50. Line number 43, we can see that my obj is created using default constructor. What will be the value? This constructor will be called, and the value of student I will be 100. Student name will be new student, and student age will be 18. These values will be obtained by object my object. So if I call like this, if we go through with that, my object dot student name, then what will be there? Yes, sorry, my object dot student ID, then the value will be 100. Correct? Because when this object is created, these values are assigned to this object. Similarly, my object dot student name will be equals to new student. Similarly, my object dot student student age will be equals to 18. So I'm not typing each and everything over here. Hope that you understood this. So now through this method, my obj dot get student name. So this getter methods. get student age and get student ID. So these values will be fetched. So what will be fetched over here? 100 for get student ID, new student for get student name method, and for get student age 18 will be printed. Similarly, for this particular line, what is happening here? We are giving the value student ID is equals to 555, student name is equals to Chaitanya, and student age is equals to 25. Now when you will call using this get methods, these values will get. Yes, so in this example, the get methods are used, but the set methods are not used. That has been just kept because it's a part of the get and set methods. If you have been with the methods in Java, you understand about this well. Yes, I told that if you want to create an object, last thing I'm showing, and I'll close this tutorial, small tutorial. Create another object without giving any, without not following this order, then it will give an error. So suppose this we are giving integer string and int, right? If you give integer, and here if you give something else, Chaiti suppose, but it will give an error. Why? Because there is no constructor defined as with the value of int, and string. There is only two constructors. One is the default constructor, another is the int string int. So you have to use this value only to create objects. Otherwise, the Java compiler will not understand what you are going to do, because you are not going to create an object in a proper way. So that will give an compile time error itself. Okay. So this is all about the constructor and the constructor overloading. So all these things you'll get as a note in the description section of my video. Hope that you like this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Thank you very much.